This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris reopened its doors to the public this past weekend during a special December 7th celebration, offering tens of millions of viewers around the world an unforgettable spectacle of hope. The Archbishop of Paris, Laurent Ulrich, led the opening ceremony with the traditional knocking on the cathedral door.
Notre Dame, Mère très aimante, ouvre tes portes pour nous aider à chercher l'amour et la vérité, la justice et la paix.
The first Mass would take place the following day on December the 8th, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, with 170 bishops on hand, and an absolutely beautiful ceremony with ringing bells and a classical grandeur. Lots of people, from donors to architects and craftsmen, were involved in the restoration of Notre Dame. Joining us live this morning from La Crosse, Wisconsin, is Professor Duncan Stroik to share more about the restoration and the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris from an architectural perspective. Professor Stroik is a practicing architect, author, and professor of architecture at the University of Notre Dame. His award-winning work includes the Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity Chapel in Santa Paula, California, the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and he's also a frequent lecturer on sacred architecture and classical tradition. Good morning, Professor Stroik. Thanks so much for joining us. It is great to be with you here this morning on Relevant Radio and Morning Air.
Great to be here, John, and it's an exciting week in Advent and an exciting week for the causes of beauty and all that was done in France.
Well, Professor, it's hard to believe it's been 5 years since we watched, and so much of the world watched in real time, the unthinkable as the flames were engulfing and destroying Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. What was your reaction then when you actually watched this famous cathedral being destroyed by fire?
It was really an unbelievable experience, and I was moved to sadness, and an old friend, an old relative dying, and yet with the great hope that the French had not only the talent and the love for Notre Dame, but the wherewithal to rebuild it as it was.
Well, I remember watching it in real time on television as it was happening, and it just was absolutely unbelievable. I only had the opportunity to be there once on a vacation in Paris with my mom, and got a taste of just the beauty and the grandeur of that magnificent cathedral. So when I saw it as a reporter, it was truly incredible. ABC News reported that it took about 500 firefighters to work tirelessly to save Notre Dame Cathedral, which had stood for 800 years, as a real testament to faith, beauty, and hope. And thank goodness that those firefighters were able to save so much of it.
Exactly. It's true. It could have been much worse. And of course, the great trauma with the fire. There's a stone ceiling in Notre Dame, but that great tower, maybe 750 tons, that wooden tower that goes up 315 feet, that caught on fire and it burned and it fell down, and the stone ceiling could not prevent it from hitting, going right through the building. So that was the greatest damage. And of course there was a fear of many other things too, but thank goodness they worked so hard and so passionately to prevent worse things happening.
Well, Professor, it took 5 years to restore this magnificent Notre Dame Cathedral, which is incredibly impressive when you consider how long it used to take in the Middle Ages to build beautiful churches like Notre Dame. Do you have any sense of how many workers and craftsmen were involved in this restoration process?
Yes, they tell us 2,000 craftsmen and workers restored Notre Dame, And of course, many working in different places in different shops around France, but just an incredible army to produce, not only produce it so quickly, but it has to still be up to the same standards of the Middle Ages. And so the stone ceiling was rebuilt the way it was. And the roof was made out of, I think, about 1,500 trees that were, some of which were cut down and then carved with axes, the way it would have been done in the Middle Ages. The tower itself was made out of wood that could be cut by machines because that's the way it was built in 1860.
Absolutely amazing. And, we in modern times, we can really appreciate the architectural marvels that the folks in the Middle Ages had to be able to build cathedrals like Notre Dame back then. They didn't have what we have today.
Yeah, all the amazing cranes that we have, things that can be like scaffolding that can be erected fairly quickly, safety measures. Normally in these great cathedrals around the world, these are the greatest buildings that we know people would die. It was kind of a normal thing because you're working at heights. And again, you're up there a couple hundred feet up in the air working at the cornice and the roof and the tower, of course, 315 feet up there. So it's a very dangerous job, but we definitely have many things to keep us safer and speed things up today. Albeit that they rebuilt Notre Dame using the same methods and the same technology. They did not add, they say they did not add extra steel or extra concrete, even though many architects and elites wanted them to kind of rebuild the building in a modern fashion rather than in something that's lasted 800 years.
Well, Professor Stroik, it's been reported that the organ, the rose windows, the flooring, the woodwork, and the wall murals were all restored. Do you know what the main damage was to the cathedral?
Yeah, so really the main damage was structural. And of course, the roof, I think 2/3 of the roof, which is the wood roof, and also the covering, the lead covering, and then the tower, those were just destroyed. And then the ceiling, the stone ceiling underneath the wood roof, had 5 holes in it, especially at the crossing, the center of the cross. That was destroyed about 42 feet by 42 feet, a big vault there. Other things they were worried about. The rose windows has some damage, one of the rose windows, and they're worried about the great flying buttresses. The front towers did okay, the bells did okay, but really it's very fortunate that more wasn't destroyed. I like to point out that the interior pews and so on, chairs and pews, and also the temporary altar that was there, those were all destroyed, but nobody's really cried about that.
Can you give us your architectural perspective on how the restoration went for Notre Dame Cathedral overall? Are you happy with the finished job?
Oh, yeah. I think the French, I've told many people that the French are among the best restorers in the world. They have some of the greatest buildings in France, and they know how to keep them up. This was a giant project, and it had to be done quickly, so they haven't had to do this in a long time. But it gives me great hope for the future, and my hope is that we can take this technology, bring it to the U.S., this traditional technology, and we can build new buildings that will last 800 years in the New World.
And I know that the beauty of Notre Dame is just a testament to the beauty of church architecture and how it can bring heaven on earth.
Amen. This is Notre Dame de Paris is definitely heaven on earth, and I hope all the listeners can get back there and see it in its brand new fashion, in its restored glory, and give Our Lady honor and thanks.
Well, we're going to have you back on another occasion to talk about what's happening there in La Crosse at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, that beautiful, magnificent church.
Yes, and now we just started building a new retreat house named after Juan Diego, and it will have 33 rooms, each with its own altarpiece. Each room is been designed as a little oratory. And we will welcome people to come there on retreat, and that should be open in about 2 years. So it's very exciting.
Well, Professor Stroik, we're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
It's an honor to be here, John. God bless.
Many blessings to you as well. Professor Duncan Stroik from the University of Notre Dame. Like what you just heard? Share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.